Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Big shoes to fill. Okay, good morning, Stokes Board, and to all of our parents, and welcome to the June board meeting. I'd like to call to order this June board meeting, and we will go through the agenda. Today we have, we're going to first start off with a review of and approve the minutes from a previous board meeting. And then Erica Bryant will give the executive director's report. And then we will close the meeting out after that, I believe. So why don't we start with our first agenda item, and that is to review and approve the meeting minutes from the previous board meeting. Why don't we all take a couple minutes to review it? They are in the live binder. And let's just review it. If you have it for any edits, for any feedbacks or any items that you think need to be adjusted. Okay, so we'll give a couple minutes for that. Well, not everybody is a slower reader as I am. So if you feel like you've had an opportunity to review it, or you've reviewed it before, I'll accept any motion to approve or to accept the meeting minutes.
Wait, I make a motion to accept the May minutes as written.
And I second the motion.
Okay. Fantastic. So why don't we will now have a voice call roll to accept the meeting minutes from the last from our last board meeting. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye, and I'll just do a roll call based upon who I see in the little boxes. Just please reply aye or nay, and for accepting the meeting minutes from the previous board meeting. And I'll start with Ms. Amy Richardson.
Aye.
Ms. Tracy Friedlander.
Aye.
Mr. Carlos Bonner.
Aye.
Ms. Erica McGrady.
Aye.
And you, sir, Antoine.
Aye.
Ms. Galladay.
Aye.
And Ms. Kierlor.
Aye.
Okay. So the motion has been accepted, and we will, and the minutes from the previous board meeting have been approved. Okay. Why don't we transition to our next item on the agenda, and that will be the executive director's report from Erica Bryant. Erica, I'll just hand it over to you.
Very good. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Well, we are officially 4 days away from the end of the school year. And I think I can speak on behalf of all of the staff and probably most of the students and families to say that this end of school year cannot come quickly enough. It has been another very challenging year. But this morning, what I wanted to do was to review just generally the accomplishments of school year 21-22 discuss where we are at the end of the school year, especially in relation to COVID. I wanted to highlight some priorities that we will have going into next school year, 22-23. And then the last slide of my presentation really is an opportunity for the community, not necessarily the board, but the community to give feedback on some of these areas of focus. All right. So in school year 21-22, we were able to accomplish quite a bit, despite the fact that we have confronted the entire time challenges related to operating during COVID. But we were able to create and implement and adapt new systems and procedures that allowed us to operate safely and effectively, both virtual schooling for students who needed it, students and staff who needed it, as well as in-person school. As we've mentioned before, this school year, we renewed our accreditation of academic programs, both the Middle States accreditation and our La Belle France Education accreditation, in furtherance of our goal of improving scholars' academic outcomes. This year, we were also able to grow our East End campus by 1 grade level with the addition of 3rd grade. Because of COVID, in some of the technology that we have been using since the onset of COVID, we've been able to strengthen cross-campus collaboration between the East End and the Brooklyn campus. It's facilitated by the use of Zoom and some of the technology that we have in the classrooms that allow us to meet virtually and to interact. We also established and expanded partnerships with organizations in the community, including the Alliance Française, the DC Language Immersion Project, Food Corps, Kindred, Martha's Table, the Ward 7 Education Council, and the Washington Youth Garden, just to name a few. But most of all, the most important thing, in my opinion, is that we survived. The Stokes School staff and communities, that means includes the scholars and the families. Again, we were able to adjust and adapt as we needed along the way. And we all worked diligently together to get to the end of the school year. So I just have tremendous gratitude to everyone who allowed us to do that. Now, at this point in the school year, because we have lifted several of the COVID mitigation and protocols, we've resumed some of our normal end of the year school activities in person that include class trips, field trips. Our 3rd grade classes from both campuses just completed an overnight camping trip to Calvert Cliffs State Park. Feedback from that trip was that both students and staff really appreciated an opportunity to get out and explore and use our community, DMV surrounding communities as classroom opportunities outdoors. Our 4th grade classes at Brooklyn took their annual trip to Virginia Beach. Our 5th grade classes, historically, their trip has been the international study tour to both Panama and Martinique. But of course, this year, because of COVID, they weren't able to do that. However, they did schedule and have participated in some fun local activities. This week, they went go-karting. Next week, they go on a trip to an adventure park. Yesterday, we held our 5th grade graduation ceremony at Brooklyn. And one of our former students, who is now an honorary alumnus, he was with us in the 4th and 5th grades, is now a medical doctor, Dr. Marcus Spady, and he was our keynote speaker. Really excellent job of speaking to the students and inspiring them. So that was a wonderful ceremony, wonderful opportunity for us to get together in person and celebrate the end of the school year. Next week, we will have kindergarten stepping up days, graduation ceremonies at each campus. The PTO at the East End campus is planning a summer festival carnival for students. And again, the end of the school year will be next Friday, June 24th. We will not be having a summer program this summer because we will use the summer to prepare for school year 22-23. Do I have any questions so far? Okay. So I wanted to talk about a few of the operational priorities that the school will have next year. Starting with our plan to return to pre-COVID-like operational status. Just this week, the DC Health Department issued new COVID guidance for schools. And in essence, the new protocols are, we no longer have any requirements. They are only recommendations. This is a shift that's being made as we shift from the pandemic to the endemic stage. So in response to that, our plans are that masking will be optional, both outdoor and indoors. Students will no longer be in cohorts or pods. We will resume the use of common areas like our multi-purpose room and our gym for our before school program, as well as morning lineups and assemblies, which we have not used those spaces to gather in community since the beginning of COVID. Also, students will begin eating most of their meals in the cafeteria since we have been back in session in person this school year. Students have mostly either eaten outside or in their classrooms, but we will resume the use of the cafeterias starting next school year. We will have some COVID mitigation and safety measures that stay in place next school year, including a continuation of our COVID testing program, where we'll test a percentage of our students and staff on a regular basis just to get, to try to have an idea of the level of COVID infection or spread within our community. The additional modular units, the buildings that we brought in this school year at the Brooklyn campus to allow us for additional space and to spread out. We will be keeping those next school year as well. We will continue to limit access to the building to general public, both as COVID mitigation and safety measures, but we will be opening the building to families for celebrations throughout the school year and select days within the trimesters. Of course, if health conditions change, we may need to adjust some of these, some of this proposed operational status, but this is our plan for the moment. Any questions about this so far? Okay. Ms. Galladay has her hand up. Yes, ma'am.
What is the percentage of testing right now? Because I know it's not 100%, but what's the percentage of testing now? How is it going?
We are testing 100% of staff and 50% of students. How is the testing going? It is, so we're using a different service now than we used at the beginning of the school year. We are using a service that is subsidized or not subsidized. The expense is covered by outside funding. And so it's a free service to us. It is not as, the results do not come as quickly as the previous service that we paid for, but we get them within 48 to 72 hours. It does allow us to have a sense of what the level of COVID infection is within the community. This is also, currently, we're still being supported by Privia Health Services that we contracted with at the beginning of the school year to help us with contact tracing, talking to families about COVID and tracking students and their return to the buildings. So Privia continues to help us with that process. So that is supporting and, that is supporting it. Does that answer your question, or were you referring to?
It does answer my question, but I just have a quick follow-up. I know
Sure.
there's a report after the test of how many people are infected, which classes and all of that. Outside of that, are like people in the class notified, like if they were in close contact anymore, or is it just look at that report and then figure it out?
Privia continues to manage our close contact, like outreach. So people who are in close contact the entire school year, the way that that's been handled is that teachers will, so if a staff member or a student is COVID positive, someone from Privia Health will reach out to that family or to that staff member to let them know that they're positive. They will also, Privia will also collect names of people who are deemed close contacts, and they are charged with outreach to those families and staff members as well. Privia will also give information to close contacts about how to monitor symptoms, testing and so forth. So there is still follow-up with close contact.
Thank you. I have one more question, but I could ask you
Sure.
offline. Well, I just want to know what's classified as close contact because, as I'm a parent at a school at the East End campus, I know there was a case in our class, and I know for sure my prince was in close contact with the person, but I didn't get any contacts. I just want to know what is
The
defined as
definition-
close contact now,
yeah.
but yeah, thank you.
The definition of close contact is someone who has been within, I believe it's 3 feet, I think it's 3 feet for over 15 minutes with the mask off.
Okay, thank you. I know they're only outside and when they're eating without the mask on. So thank you for that.
You're
I'm
welcome.
done. I'm done.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Another operational priority that we have next school year, this actually determines our continued operations moving forward. We have our 25-year charter review and renewal scheduled for the early part of next school year. The DC Public Charter School Board is required by law to review each charter school at least once every 5 years. So we just had one 5 years ago for our 20th renewal, and we have one coming up in October of 2022, October 17th, 2022. As of right now, the review is scheduled to be a virtual hearing with the DC Public Charter School Board. Prior to the actual review, PCSB is going to provide Stokes School staff with a report of its assessment of our school. After the hearing that we have on the 17th, PCSB will vote to either continue or revoke Stokes Schools Charter. We, the leadership in our leadership team, we have completed a couple of meetings with the public charter school staff. We expect that our charter will be renewed, and we are looking forward to getting that process completed next year. Questions about that? Some of our programmatic priorities for next school year include the continued acceleration of student learning to promote academic recovery. We will continue to demonstrate and elevate our commitment to social justice as part of the mission of the school. We plan to expand and improve health and wellness programs, sustain and expand our family engagement and communication efforts. And we will plan for, in earnest, our middle high school expansion, as our application for that process will be due next year. In terms of accelerating student learning, next year we will implement evidence-based interventions, offering tutoring to students both before and after school. This is for students who are identified in need of academic support. We plan to provide additional instructional materials for students, as well as teacher training to support the implementation of both our math and English curricula. We'll also provide updated curriculum materials for reading and writing that are better aligned with the science of reading and include more emphasis on teaching of phonics skills. In terms of social justice and that priority, we know that Stokes School is rooted in social justice. It's part of our mission, the mission again being to prepare culturally diverse students to be leaders, scholars, and responsible citizens who are committed to social justice. In next school year, we intend to participate in something that's called an equitable access preference through the My School DC lottery. This was formerly known as the at-risk preference. This gives weighting preference for students in the admission process. And these are students who are from historically marginalized communities. And the thought is that this will, we hope to be able to increase the diversity within, or sustain the diversity of students and backgrounds within our community by participating in this equitable access process. We'll also continue to partner with an organization called Kindred that's already done work on the Brooklyn campus in terms of equity. Kindred is a DC-based organization, and they facilitate conversations between families, school staff about race and equity. So Kindred has worked with the Brooklyn campus for over 3 years now. The East End campus will start to, has actually already started within the staff to do that work, and will continue that work next year with staff and families. Any questions? In terms of family engagement and communication, we already exceed our family engagement and communication goals. We have on each campus phenomenal family engagement coordinators, very active group of parents who are highly engaged in PTA and PTO activities. And I just mentioned the equity groups that will be on both campuses. facilitated by the Kindred organization. We also have very high rates of participation in parent-teacher conferences and other school activities. So next year, we plan to resume the in-home visitation model. Stokes school staff will conduct home visits during the summer and at the beginning of the school year to support relationship building with families and students. The hope is that this relationship building will promote high student attendance rates. More consistent attendance from students should lead to more consistent academic performance. And as we've mentioned, we've talked about several times throughout the school year. Next school year, we will be planning for our high school, middle school. As we know, the East End campus will be at full growth in school year 2023-24. They'll be graduating a class of 5th graders. Next school year, we will submit a charter amendment application to the DC Public Charter School Board that will allow us to expand the grade levels that we serve and increase our enrollment ceiling, thereby allowing us to expand to middle school and eventually high school. The proposed opening date of middle school will be August of 2024. We will be starting with 6th grade and eventually expand through 12th grade, adding a grade level each year. Our programming for that middle high school plan will be a continuation of our language immersion program, offering both French and Spanish, considering also adding Chinese Mandarin language. This will be a continuation of our IB program. We plan to apply to the middle years program through IB when we have our middle school established. We will also expand our wellness, food and nutrition and gardening program to include eventually a Stokes school farm where there will be expanded opportunities to grow produce beyond our school gardens. We will also expand programming partnerships with community organizations, and the middle high school programming will also include art and music options. And this last slide, this is intended for the broader community as an end of year school message. As part of an end of year school message to the community, we'll be talking about the programs that we are planning to focus on next year. And as I mentioned to you, our operational plans. And to get feedback from the community, we will include these links that will allow community members to respond to several questions about each of these programmatic priorities. And so that is the conclusion of this part of the presentation. Are there any questions?
Eric, I had a question.
Yes.
Did per your slide about the changing guidance from the DCPS for the COVID treatment, did they? Do you recall what guidance they left in place?
So the guidance there, I can actually, let me see if I can bring this up from my memory. There is guidance, there's recommendations for schools to look at certain environmental factors, look at the level of COVID spread within the environment to determine how we space ourselves for social distancing, to determine whether or not to mask inside. There is always encouragement that, the best mitigating factor is vaccinations. And so now that the little ones, 5 and under, can get vaccinated, I'm sure that there will be a continued push over the summer to increase vaccination levels. Let's see. But yes, it's the overall theme was that because, not that we have gotten a handle on COVID, but because COVID infection rates are not impacting the community in the same way that they did in 2020, we are at a point where basically we decide how we're going to respond to this, right? We decide whether or not we will have masking indoors based on COVID infection rates in the community. We decide whether we will have students congregate again. We decide about the social distancing. They only give recommendations.
Yes.
They meaning the DC Health Department.
Got it.
Any other questions?
Ms. Bryant,
Yes.
can you offer any more detail about the links that you have there and the invitation for the general community to give feedback on these priorities?
So we will be sending out, we've already sent out an end of year message to staff and spoken to staff about some of these upcoming changes. We will be sending out an end of year message to the school community, meaning families, with the information that I presented here, as well as links included in the message to allow families to give feedback on our proposed priorities. Families will be able to click on the links. They will be able to read a series of prompt questions and respond to those questions. That information will be gathered by staff to help us to kind of help guide some of the priorities for next school year.
And will these links be available somewhere else, like on our website?
We can post that. We post, yes, we will post board materials on the website, which will include these links. And we can also post these links separately, but the end of school year message will also be posted on the website.
Thank you.
Ms. Bryant, you mentioned in your presentation, we were gonna open ourselves up to additional, I guess, the DC lottery for at-risk. Do we have any statistics on what our current at-risk population number is?
12%.
Okay. And you mentioned we'll
Which
be
is-
off. Oh, yes.
Which is very low,
Oh.
very low. I think, so DCPS average is probably around, I think it's around 80%.
Oh, wow. And you also mentioned we'd be offering tutoring to the at-risk population. Is that already a resource in place, or is that a new resource that will be offered in the next school year?
Thank you for the question. We do have tutoring now, but we will be increasing because we will have the opportunity to do it in before school program, as well as after school. We have not had a before school program for the last couple of years because of COVID, because the structure of our before school program puts all the kids in one area. And we couldn't congregate like that during COVID. So we're bringing that back. Thank you for the question.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Ballard?
Will the at-risk percentage be the same for both campuses? The same across the board?
It's, so it's across the LEA, across the network. I'm sorry, can you be a little bit more specific with your question? Will the at-risk percentages of students that we are taking in be the same? Yes, it will be the same across the network. Ms. Moore.
I understood the question in a different way. I'm sorry for making faces on the screen. My response would have been that the numbers of at-risk students at each campus will depend on the number of at-risk applicants that we receive at each campus, at individual campuses. For example, if we have a whole lot more at-risk students actually trying to come to the Brooklyn campus, as compared to the East End campus, we are likely to have a greater percentage of at-risk students at Brooklyn as opposed to East End. And so I think it's a difference in the understanding of the question, and I'm not certain. I'm not certain whether I'm right or not.
Yeah. So in response to Ms. Galladay's question, the percentage of, so we can with the at-risk preference program or the equitable access preference program, we can establish a percentage of additional of at-risk students that we want to give priority in the application process. So that percentage will be the same across the network. Let's say, for example, we want to admit 10%, we want to give 10% preference to the equitable access program. That would be the same across the network. At one campus, we may already have more at-risk students than another campus, right? And so the percentage of at-risk students at each campus will not be the same, but the percentage that we are looking to accept through that equitable access program will be the same across the network.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
That helps me, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Erica, I would just like to understand more about the equitable access application process and more information. I've looked online, I've put in the chat a link. I found it interesting, for example, to see what the definition was of at-risk children. If I'm correct, it says at-risk, and it's just for our own knowledge here at the board level. At-risk for the purposes of this policy means that a student is homeless under the care of the district's foster care system, qualifies for temporary assistance for needy families, or the supplemental nutrition assistance program, or that the high school student is overage. So I think that's just more information is very helpful, and thank you for putting in the application on behalf of the schools. I think it's important, and it's part of our mission. So thank you.
Thank you for adding that context, Tracy. Yes. There is also discussion about inclusion of undocumented students in that definition of at risk at some point in the future, undocumented and or English language learners, but that conversation is still in process.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay. Krista, do we have anything from the parents chat at all? Ms. Gallaudet? Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much, Erica, I appreciate it. I think that was a good informative presentation. The school has definitely been through a lot this last year, this last couple of years. So I think hopefully I speak for, I'm pretty sure that I can speak for all the board that we appreciate your leadership and the work that your team is doing. It's been a pretty tumultuous last couple of years. This current school year has not been an exception. We can also see that there's a lot on our plate for we have a very ambitious schedule these next couple of years with the middle school opening, with the 25-year review, although I expect that we will do very well in that, not have any issues. So I think that it's also a testament to the fact that the school is coming out of a very challenging period, that it's not shying away from its goals, and still striving to grow, and still striving to reach its mission, and to reach its mission with more students. So thank you very much. Okay, I think that we are looking now. Are we looking at earlier I said this would probably be the conclusion of our meeting, but are we looking at another aspect of our meeting, Erica?
Yes, I have just admitted Bill.
Okay.
So he should be joining us in a minute.
So,
And in order to transition to the next phase of the meeting, we go into.
okay, so thank you. So Bill is going to lead us through the financial